F is symbolically representing the fraction of sites that are occupied in this first graphic here. It's the proportion of those individual habitat patches that contain a population. If F is 1, that means that all of those sites are completely filled up. If F is 0, that means none of them are filled up. They're all empty. Everything in them is extinct. So the change in this number of sites, the fraction of sites that are occupied over the change in time is a function of I minus E. I in this case is integration, the proportion of sites colonized per unit time. E is not emigration, it stands for extinction here, and it's the extinction rate. And so it's the proportion of sites that go extinct per unit time. So we can break that down into a couple. So I is a function of P sub I times 1 minus F, where P sub I is the probability of local colonization, times 1 minus the fraction of sites occupied. The extinction rate is a function of P sub E, and that's the probability of the local extinction event times the fraction of sites occupied. So if we put that back together to create our equation, this is what we get. The change in the fraction of sites occupied per unit time is a function of the probability of colonization times the fraction of sites still available to be occupied, minus the probability of extinction times the fraction of sites that are occupied. All right? So, what's kind of the take home from this basic model? Well, if integration rate is really high and the extinction rate is really low, what's going to happen to the fraction of sites occupied per unit time? It's going to go way up. And if the extinction rate is really high and the integration rate is really low, what's going to happen to the number of fraction of occupied sites? They're going to go down. All right? So again, I greater than E, fraction goes up. If I is less than E, fraction of sites occupied goes down. All right, well, what is this model? Well, one thing it can model is us. It can also model things like prairie dogs really well, too. Everybody's seen prairie dogs, right? You ever seen a prairie dog town? They're very cool. They exist in like these prairie dog cities, right? They have all these burrow structures. They're all interconnected. But not only that, but they're like cities. And they have migration between other prairie dog towns. And so sometimes it's pretty rapid when the towns are real close. Sometimes it's pretty far away. Sometimes they'll run above ground. Sometimes they'll actually have 1 or 2 tunnels that go from town to town, even though they're in isolated sets. So it's just like our kind of construct, right? It's all underground. So here's the question then. I'm looking at a prairie dog town in an Oklahoma plain. It's inhabited by these prairie dogs, and they're found grouped into these spatially segregated populations, which are connected via migration, immigration, emigration. So I want to know, how does the fraction of occupied prairie dog towns, F, change with time if, right, the probability of prairie dog town colonization is 60%. The probability of a prairie dog extinction event is 20%. 1 minus F is the fraction of unoccupied towns, and F is the fraction of occupied towns, which starts out at 50%. So based on those values, I want you to get together with your partner, and I want you to tell me, how does the fraction of occupied prairie dog towns change with time? Is it 50% increase, 40% increase, 30% decrease, or 20% decrease? So get together and work that out, please. You know intuitively if it's going to go up or go down? What do you think? It's up intuitively. How do you know that? Because I is greater than E, but do we know exactly how much? No, not easy to count. All right. So we have an intuitive feel for what it's going to do, but not with any precision. Okay, please input your answer. Let's stop it at 130. A few more seconds. All right, that's a good stopping point. We're right at our typical take. So let's see. For some reason, the histogram's not coming up on the screen. I'm not sure. But anyway, the histogram pops up at 95%. And it's popping up on D. So that's a really nice tight consensus. Let's see if that is the case, whether it is D. And lo and behold, D it is. So again, just plugging in those parameter values, right? So P sub I was 60%, 0.6. Well, what was F in this case? 50% at 0.5. So it's 0.6 times 1 minus 0.05 minus the probability of extinction, 20%, 0.2, times, again, what's the F? Fraction of occupied town, 50%, 0.5. That equals 0.3 minus 0.1, 20%. All right? So the model's pretty easy to use. It told me it was going to go up, and it told me with precision what that increase should be. What do you do with it now? Do I slap myself on the back and say, yeah, I'm the man. I created the meta population model. Knight me, give me money, whatever. Am I done? No, what do I have to do? The math is thank you. The math is worthless unless you test it and see if it's reality based. Okay? So that's exactly what you can do with it. So let's move and do that, and I'm going to show you an example of it. So this is an example from the Bay Area. Remember we talked about serpentine soils? What kind of flowers grow on serpentine soils? Goldfield flowers. They're specialists on that soil. Well, just like flowers, there's a specialist insect that feeds on flowers, and it's this. And so this is the Bay checker spot butterfly. Why is it called the Bay? It's from the Bay Area. Why is it called the checker spot? It's got checker spots. All right. So again, it's not the most inventive name, but it's very descriptive of the organism. So this is a complete specialist on Goldfield flowers. And so there's the caterpillar, the larval stage, and there's the adult. So the thing about the caterpillars are, they're like the sessile barnacle. And they move very well, really slow moving. They stay isolated to their patches. If they try and cross from one serpentine patch to another, what happens to them? They die. Either they get picked, most of the time they get picked off by birds, okay? So they're isolated there. But what is mobile? The butterfly, which is the adult phase of the organism, and that can move around between the patches. So this is what it looks like over here, right? So those are the serpentine soil outcroppings. All that tan around it are the normal sandstone soils that we've been talking about. So it's almost like islands in a sea, right? So each of those little islands, and there's big islands, right? There's smaller little tiny islands. What does that look like that I just put up? That is a metapopulation, okay? I have an overall population of these organisms on these habitats, but the habitats themselves are isolated in space. The big populations, what do you think is happening to their population growth rates? Are they high or are they low? I mean, are they muted or are they fast? They're muted, they're kind of slow. But those little tiny ones, they're really fast. They go up and they go down really quickly. So in this particular case, this area was hit with a drought. Now, remember about serpentine soil, it had a problem. What was some of the problems with it? It has lots of metals in it, it binds calcium, but it also, since it's pretty dense, it doesn't hold what well? It doesn't hold water well. So it dries out much faster than the sandstone soils around it, and that's problematic. So in drought years, what happens is the Goldfield flowers die. Well, if the flowers die, what's going to happen to the caterpillars? They die. Will there be adult butterflies? No. So that's problematic. So in 75 to 77, there was a big drought. What happened was multiple subpopulations died out. Guess what size they were? They were the small ones. The small ones went first. Okay? So multiple populations died out. Now, notice certain populations hung on. In particular, which ones hung on? The big ones held on, right? So what happened was, in the very next year, after these droughts were over, after 3 years, there was a pretty good rain event. Lo and behold, they went back and looked, and guess what had happened? Those extinct populations were recolonized by the big populations, and the populations were back on track again. When modeled, putting in the parameter values into this model, it measured with high precision what the fraction of sites occupied was going to be in the very next year. So it did a great job. Why? Because the natural phenomenon, the way this population was centered with the discrete habitats and the migration being intermediate in nature, it ended up modeling perfectly the dynamics of the natural system. So it had high accuracy. So it's a nice example of a model that had high utility. And therefore, no one was freaking out that the butterflies were going to go completely extinct, because as soon as we found out what the conditions were, it was estimated that there would be an increase, recolonization. That's exactly what happened, and the percentile was almost completely accurate. All right? Good. All right, so that finishes the logistic growth model. Well, let's go into more complexity. So everything we've talked about to this point has been one population by itself in relative isolation. We've added a little more complexity by single populations aren't homogeneous. They show heterogeneity, they're broken up into smaller components. However, we still were talking about one population. Does the world look like that? No. So the world is full of lots of populations of different species interacting with each other. And that by far is the norm. Are there cases where individual populations don't interact with anything? Yes, but again, they're what? They're very rare, okay? This is by far the norm, is to interact with other species. So when you interact, there are certain species that are completely unaffected by the presence or absence of other species, but most are not. Most species interact, and those interactions can be positive, they can be negative, or they actually may be neutral, all right? But either positive or negative is usually the norm. So there are different types of interactions. I'm going to give you 5 basic ones. Mutualism, commensalism, amensalism, competition, predation, and parasitism go hand in hand. They're basically the same thing. Notice the little pluses and the minuses and the zeros, right? So again, this is indicating what's happening to the population growth rate of each species involved in this interaction. So mutualism is plus plus. What does that mean? Species involved in this interaction, what happens to their population growth rates? They both go up. A commensalism means that 2 species involved in the interaction, one population growth rate does what? Go up with the other, not affected and no change. Amensalism means that one suffers. Its population growth rates do what? They go down. The other, not affected. Competition, we've already talked about that. What happens? They both go down. And then finally we have predation. A positive and a negative. Who's getting the benefit here, obviously? If I eat you, I'm doing well. If you're being eaten, you're not doing well. If I parasitize you and I'm a parasite, I'm doing great. If you're the host, yeah, you're not doing so well. So it's a plus-minus relationship. Notice they do overlap, however. And there's definitely kind of a blending of these. But there's examples that are very discrete as well. So we measure this as population growth rates, positive, negative. And we compare them to other organisms, other species, I should say, that are not involved in that interaction to compare the growth rates. And that's how you can tell if it goes up or goes down. So, let's do an example here. Let's talk about mutualism. So mutualism, again, they both benefit, the population growth rates will both go up. Here's a nice example. So we're looking at the rhino, and then on its back are the tick birds. Why are they called the tick birds? Because these ticks, okay? So here's the thing. When you look at this, this is actually a mutualistic relationship. Wherever you find rhinos with tick birds on their back, they're healthier, they're bigger, and they have more babies. Their reproductive output is greater. Wherever you find tick birds on the back of rhinos, those birds are bigger, healthier, and they produce more eggs and more babies. It's a great relationship. How does it work? Well, here's the thing. Do you like to have birds on your back? No. Having birds on your back is not a pleasant experience. Why? Because they're loud, they're noisy, they're jumping all around, and since birds are designed to fly, they don't hold their urine or their feces. What do? They release it immediately, which means it goes where? On you. You ever seen those people with like big ferrets on their back? Go look at their back. That's not pleasant, okay? So, it's not the most pleasant thing for rhinos to have that on them, but they don't care. They just let them sit there. Now, the reason is, when you look at a rhino, it's a living armored tank. But like any piece of armor, in order to move, it has to have what? It can't just be a solid piece of metal or it doesn't move. So what do you have to get armor to move? Think about an armor suit.
Plates, like areas where it's not protected.
Areas where it's not plated, and those are called the joints. So if you were to put on armor, there's always jointing systems in it, right? And that increases the flexibility. So when you go up to a rhino, if they'll let you close without killing you, and you feel the skin on it, it's thick, it's multiple layers of just this leathery, tough skin, almost impenetrable. But if you see those folds, wherever I go into those folds, that's the joint in their skin. And that fold is actually, in the inside of it, is as soft as the skin in your armpit right here. Very soft, right? Now here's the thing, if I'm a tick, can I get through the outside? But where can I get? Right in those folds, and I can get inside the ears, right? Any place that's open like that. Now here's the thing, how many of you guys have had ticks before? Raise your hands. Liars. Have you ever been outside before? If you hike, you've got ticks, okay? Ticks are nasty business, and when you get them, they're unpleasant. But if you get a tick, what do you do with it? You faint? What do you do with it? You can flame them off, but the most common thing is for people just to do what? Pull them off, all right? It's not the best way to do it. It's a terrible way to do it. That's what most people freak out. They pull it right off. It says you have that thumb to do it. Do they have a thumb? They have no thumb. Ticks are very unpleasant creatures because they bite and they cause disease spread and things like that. And they're nasty. They're just unpleasant. Here's the thing. They're itchy. They're really miserable to have. You feel them immediately and you pull them off once they bit you. However, they can't do that. You know they don't like it because they're rubbing up against things and trying all kinds of stuff. But who can get at the ticks? The birds have that nice long beak. And so they can reach into the folds and grab those ticks. Ticks go where it's warmest because they're looking for blood as their meal. So they have a tendency to congregate in areas that are unpleasant. For us, it's the head, because that's the area that's hottest. But where else? Armpits and crotch. It's no different for that animal, okay? Ears, folds, armpits, and crotch. That's where they go. But they don't have a thumb to pick it off. So that is a nightmarish experience for them. And it's all over them. And ticks carry diseases. So if you can't get the ticks off, you're not only going to be uncomfortable, but they're going to spread disease to you. Typically your weight's going to go down, you can get sick, you're going to have less what? Babies. But if the birds are there, they go in all the folds, they pick out the ticks, they go right in the ears, they pick all that stuff out, and the rhinos are very healthy, they have more babies. And that's why the rhinos allow it. It's a great relationship for them. What does the bird get out of it? Food. So they're getting an easy source of food. What else do they get out of it? Protection. What can attack a bird this big? Everything. What can attack a bird this big sitting on that? Only the stupid and the dead. Okay? Nothing else is attacking that bird. Alright? So they're completely, their predation risk is zero when you're sitting basically on the back of something like that. There's another advantage too. When these animals walk through the grass, they disturb prey for the bird. Anybody from a rural area kind of walk through fields before or anything like that? Anybody in here? When you walk through an open field, what happens as you walk through it in front of you? Bugs just fly up in the air like that because they get startled. Well, what happens is these rhinos are big and they're walking through these big 6-foot grasses in the plains. All these bugs fly into the air. The birds just sight them, winnow off, grab the prey, right back to the beast again. It works great. So they get more food, they're well protected. What happens to their reproductive rates? Up they go. Here's another example. So this is our local sea anemone here. And so in this case we're looking at, it's very green, it looks like a plant, right? Is it a plant? No, this is an animal. It's an idarian, it's a stinging animal. It's related to jellyfish. Ever been stung by jellyfish? How many of you have been stung by jellyfish? Was that a pleasant experience? No, that pretty much sucks. Okay? Jellyfish are brutal. Well, this thing has stinging cells in it. So the stinging cells are really cool. They look like a jack-in-the-box. They have a little lever on the top. If you disturb it physically or chemically, it can be induced. The top springs off. They can send out this harpoon. It can be sticky. It can have all kinds of toxic loads on it, neurotoxins, digestive things on it. Pretty brutal. It can be really bad. So if you get stung by certain kinds of jellyfish, they can put excruciating stings on it. Right? I had a person I saw that was really bad. It was in Fiji, off an island surfing there, and a guy got hit with a box of jelly, which is one of these cubomedusas. And it hit him so hard that he was in convulsions by the time he got to the beach. And the thing that was nasty about it was, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who is hit by jellyfish that are that intense, but it causes this weird kind of body constriction of the muscles as it is hitting you. And in that constriction, this poor guy bit his tongue off. And it was, I never realized how much blood comes from someone biting their tongue off, but it was disgusting. Luckily, this island had experience with that, and they injected him with something that counteracted the effect of it. I think it's an epinephrine or something like that that counteracts the effect of the sting. And they grabbed his tongue and threw it in a cup of ice, and then boated him to the mainland. And he was fine. And, you know, they all stitched it back together and everything. And from what I heard, he was perfectly fine. They put it right back on. But pretty brutal. That's how powerful these things can be. Okay? So it's green. Why is it green? Because it's an animal that inside of it has a photosynthetic organism, which is a particular kind of dinoflagellate algae referred to as zooxanthellae. So what's going on here? Why are they together? When they're together, they both do better in terms of reproductive success. Their population growth rates go up. All right, why does the animal do better when there is algae within it?
Gets food.
What's that?
It gets food.
It gets food. What is the algae producing constantly? Energy in the form of what? The bonds in sugar. It's producing glucose. Here's what the algae does. Any glucose in excess of its metabolic needs, it donates to the animal. Well, that's great for the animal because can the animal get up and run around? Nope. They're completely dependent on things coming to them via occurrence, accident, whatever it may be, being foolish enough to get stung, and then they get that food source. But they're just like us, they need to eat. But what happens is, I don't get to eat for 3 days. Is it a big deal? Yeah, I'm starving, right? But is it a big deal for this? Not a problem at all. Because I don't eat for a week? Big deal. Who's feeding me? The algae is. So their population growth rates go way up when they have the algae in them. What's the algae getting out of it? Protection. If you put that algae on the rock next to the anemone, it's gone in a second. Something will eat it, consume it. Conditions are rough, abiotically, physically, it's gone. Stick it in there, super well protected against environmental changes. Also, who eats the anemone? Not many things are tough enough to go in there and start snacking on that. So they're completely well defended. So the population growth rates of the algae goes up. It's a really nice mutualistic symbiotic relationship that allows both to be successful.